Hello and welcome to the big picture. India and Sri Lanka, which shared a civilizational relationship for centuries, has been witnessing some strain in the ties for some time now. Now with the two new leaders in both the countries and the Sri Lankan President Maithripala Sirisena coming to India on his first foreign visit as President, hopes have been raised of the relationship being rebooted. For years, the Indian government's responses to the neighbor has been more or less dependent on the politics of Tamil Nadu. While some feel it is inevitable, others feel that such hold of state politics on international relations is detrimental. Meanwhile, the change of government in Sri Lanka and the defeat of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa is also being seen in India as an opportunity to start a new chapter in the relations. This is especially so in the context of the increasing influence of China on Sri Lanka. We will discuss today the ramifications of the visit of Sri Lankan President on the ties between the two countries in the changed political circumstances in both countries. To discuss this, I have with me Professor S.D. Muni, Foreign Affairs Analyst, and a former Professor G. Parthasarathy, former Ambassador, Air Vice Marshal retired Kapil, a Defence Analyst, Professor P. Sahadeva of the Centre for South Asian Studies, JNU, and Inder Badhwar, Editor-in-Chief of India Legal Magazine. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Parthasarathy, you think that this visit is something, as people are talking about, it's a rebooting of ties, new chapter and all this?
Well, let's put it this way. The results of the elections there have been broadly welcomed here for two reasons. One, while we cannot take away the credit from President Rajapaksa for ending terrorism, and we should understand that respect for him still continues in Sri Lanka. The relationship became difficult because, one, he remained insensitive to Tamil aspirations. The entire northern province was stifling for the Tamils, beset with armed forces. And he went a bit too far in relations with China. The most notable conclusion of that being, on a Chinese-built sort of port facilities, which have been leased to the Chinese, within a span of a month to have two Chinese submarines calling. It raised eyebrows not only here, it raised eyebrows in Tokyo, it raised eyebrows in Washington. So to the extent that this change, and this is a change brought about by a national consensus. Don't forget that this is a coalition put together by both national parties. Former President Kumaratunga and Ranil Wickremesinghe, a very formidable UNP leader. So it enjoys a national consensus, and one gets a very clear impression that on both issues of concern to us, that is easing off and giving the Tamil population political space, and on strategic concerns, this government will be more sensitive to what India wants. So yes, this is a moment to be capitalized on, or to even bend backwards a bit to accommodate what the Sri Lankans do, understand their domestic compulsions and deal with them.
Okay. Professor Sahadeva, would you agree with what Mr. Parthasarathy says? Is this would it be seen as a new chapter?
I think it's an opportunity to really reorient. I think the uneasiness India enjoyed with the former regime in Colombo vanished now. I think you have plenty of opportunities to really sort of reorient your relationship. Given the fact that he's very positive minded in a way. I think he's not one of those hawkish nationalists who displayed similar chauvinism. But on the other hand, I think he's a man who is very keen to really bring about a change even internally. So why not engage him in a very constructive manner?
Okay. Engaging. Inder Badhwar? Inder, there have been Inder, there have been lot of talk about Mahinda Rajapaksa, as Mr. Parthasarathy says, that you can't take away from him the fact that he ended terrorism there, as Mr. Parthasarathy says. You think that the new president, the new government is a good sign as far as India is concerned?
Oh, I don't think much is going to change, Girish, and because I think that what Partha is repeating is a whole bunch of cliches about the Indian-Sri Lankan relationship, Tamil aspirations, ending of terrorism, a new beginning, new consensus. I mean, it obviously shows that Partha has not visited, like he used to in the old days. He hasn't visited the spot and
was there 5 weeks
like
ago
a
in the-
reporter, because Partha always speaks like a...
I was there 5 weeks ago.
Partha, you always used to, one of the reasons I always admired you was because you spoke more like a reporter than a politician, like a typical cliche jholawala politician. The Partha, no, seriously, the point is this, that look, even Rajapaksa, when he became president in 2005, the first country that he visited was India. And one of the things that people don't seem to realize when they say that India-Sri Lankan relationships are on the mend again, is that the defeated Sri Lankan Prime Minister, the first two things that he did was to try and reverse just the opposite of what people generally think is happening with this new coalition, because this coalition is run by Chandrika and by Ranil. And Ranil and Chandrika were the two people who led Sri Lanka hook, line and sinker into a warmer Chinese embrace with the huge arms relationship with both China and with Pakistan. And the thing about Rajapaksa, which most people don't seem to realize, is that you needed a strong man who could actually keep a balance between a very strong anti-Indian feeling that has been there in Sri Lanka ever since the 13th Amendment was enacted, which most Sri Lankans look upon as a gross interference in the domestic affairs. I know, it was a pact between Jayawardene and Rajiv. But if you look at the ordinary Sri Lankan on the ground, he feels that it's an intrusion into the affairs of his country. Now, what Rajapaksa was able to do basically was to make sure that while he got enough arms to be able to fight, which I agree with you was one of the most deadly terrorist organizations ever created in the world, and he needed those arms from China, he needed them from Pakistan, he needed them from Ukraine, he needed them from Russia, and he got them, and he got some spares every now and then from India. But the new coalition, unfortunately, is a very weak coalition, because don't forget that, number one, its components are completely antithetical to each other. The DNA has nothing to do absolutely with the Muslims who were pushed out east in an ethnic cleansing by Prabhakaran and his group, and who actually hate each other. The TNA has nothing to do with the JHU and the JVP, who are virulently anti-Indian, because if you remember the Marxist revolution, the Marxist violent revolution was put down in the 70s with the help of the secret help of the Indians. And it was a pretty ruthless put down in which almost as many people died as died in the Elam War. And so this is a very weak coalition, and it needs a very strong person to be able to hold it together. Otherwise, I think it will fall apart. And if it falls apart, it's not going to be good for India.
Okay.
It's going to be good for China.
Okay. Professor Muni, very divergent views coming so far. Where do you stand?
He's saying, Mr. Badhwar is saying so many things which some of them are uncomfortable to accept. First, that Ranil and Chandrika had a warmer embrace with China. This is a news to me. I mean, if he has time, we can go into the details and say this. Nothing like that ever happened.
Example, sir.
Secondly,
I'll come to you. Inder, let him finish. I'll come back to you.
I'll give you one.
Inder, let him finish. I'll come back to you.
Then I shut up. One example, sir. Then I shut up.
Okay.
Let me tell you on the arms, and please, and I will sit and listen, because these are things that very.
Let me complete my argument.
He is giving one example.
I know what example he is giving.
No, let the viewers know what example he is giving.
I'll give you one example.
Yeah, very quickly, Inder.
Okay, I'll give you one example. I'll give you one example. One of the examples was that the Indians in 2005, when Rajapaksa was elected, were extremely uncomfortable with the fact that a huge amount of radars, multi-dimensional color radars, were purchased from China on very concessional rates by Chandrika, that were capable of actually looking into Odisha. They were so powerful. the Indians were very scared that these would be used by forces antithetical to India
Okay.
from Sri Lankan ground.
Okay.
They requested him to cancel the contract, which actually Rajapaksa did. One of the first things that did
Okay.
was he returned the Chinese radars, cancelled the contract done by his predecessors, and went in and bought Indian radars, the Indra radars.
Okay. Okay. Yes, Professor Muni.
What I was saying is that Chandrika and Ranil both approached India for all kind of military assistance. The fact remains on the hard ground that we were not willing to give them any lethal weapons. In fact, they even wanted us to lease some of our aircrafts for a few while. We were not willing to do that because of the Tamil Nadu factor or because of various other considerations. Therefore, we let them go and buy arms from others.
Correct.
It was actually during Rajapaksa, and after 2005 is the last year of Chandrika, incidentally. It was Rajapaksa that both Shiv Shankar Menon and M.K. Narayan,
You're right.
not now, had to go and tell him that, look, the way you are going and buying arms is not really fair. So this is just one point. Secondly, finishing LTTE is not a big deal, let me tell you. It was earlier 3 occasions when LTTE had militarily almost been finished. It was not finished largely because of the lack of political will or political considerations. Jayawardene did it almost like that. Chandrika did it in 2000, around that time. And
you remember what
please,
happened?
we can't have discussion like
They almost
this.
split the country in 2000.
We can't have discussion
I don't know
like
what
this.
you're talking about. You're getting
Inder-
the history all completely messed up.
Inder, let him,
Completely messed up.
Inder, let him finish, please.
It was the multi-barrel rocket launchers.
Inder-
They got no, but he's
Inder, let him have his say. Let him have his say. Let him have his say. I'll come back to you. Yes.
No, I'm afraid this
No,
is
no, no, please continue.
Sorry, Girish. Girish.
No, and this is where we have been trying to
I
persuade
apologize.
Rajapaksa in one way or the other. Rajapaksa finished LTT with a huge kind of humanitarian crisis. That is where Rajapaksa got boxed in, both by the international community and uncomfortable, a lot of discomfort in India as well. Secondly, towards China, I mean, it is true that Hambantota was offered to us and we said no for one reason or another. I think good economic reasons we said no.
Yes.
We did not want any other competitive port to come to, our shabby ports or whatever else it is. Let's not discuss it. But
we couldn't stop it coming up.
No, but on Hambantota, when you translate, as GP has said very rightly, when you translate your economic presence into a strategic asset, look, this is the violation of the spirit of 87 agreement. Whether Sri Lanka accepted it or not, or what conditions it accepted it, but it is a violation of our security concerns, which at that time Sri Lanka has said we will continue to honor. So the problems arose out of Rajapaksa
Okay.
regime.
Inder, please. Inder, please let him finish. Inder, let him finish, please. Inder, he has to finish. I'll come back to you.
I think all the wisdom lies with Mr.
No, it's
Badhwar.
okay.
Let him
No,
say
we
whatever
will
he
come to
wants.
Inder, give
what
us
has happened in
some
the
time
past.
and
We'll keep it aside for a moment. Kapil, how do you look at this strategic? Yesterday the meeting between the two leaders, saying we will take the defense and strategic cooperation forward. Do you think that under the new dispensation, India will be able to deal with Sri Lanka in a far better manner?
I think, unfortunately, the discussion sort of drifted off into local politics of
Yes.
Sri Lanka.
Let us leave that aside.
We are
sometime.
discussing India-Sri Lanka relations and what's the impact of the visit of Mr. Sri Sena. I think first point that needs to be flagged, I'm glad Professor Muni talked about the strategic factor, that Sri Lanka is a very core element in India's strategic neighborhood. And if Prime Minister Narendra Modi looks at SAARC as the linchpin of that broader strategy, the relations with Sri Lanka have to take on a completely new plane. And I think I'll go back to the point you made about Mahinda Rajapaksa's success in fighting terror in Sri Lanka. But we need to understand that war on terror itself led to certain consequences which are strategic. One, you not only devastated the land, you not only had Chinese then increase their influence in Sri Lanka. 3, humanitarian crisis in terms of 40,000 lives being lost in a short period of 3 months. I mean, it was not we have handled terror so successfully in the last 60 years. That's no way to handle terror. So I think, yes, of course, at the end of the day, Mahinda Rajapaksa got intoxicated by that power, by the popularity, and then looked at calibration in completely different angles. One was to get closer to China. The gravitational pull of India began to be reduced gradually, despite the fact that India, while denying him lethal weapons in that fight, gave him, as Mr. Badhwar rightly said, Indira radars. We didn't want, we gave them intelligence which they wouldn't get from anywhere. So we did help him. But I don't think there was a quid pro quo. He began to play China against India, got Pakistan wherever he wanted Pakistan. As he himself said, he alienated people within his own country. He said, these are his words, I was defeated by the Muslims, the Tamils, and the northern Sri Lankan Tamils. He has said it. This is Mahinda Rajapaksa's word.
Okay.
So I think the relation forward, I want to put just 3 issues. And I mean, absolutely a defining moment is this nuclear civil cooperation agreement. I mean, it's not what that agreement means. Probably Sri Lanka will have 60 megawatts of power through nuclear forces by 2030. But look at what it does to the world. Look at what it does to China. It will have to recalibrate its strategies here. Second is maritime Silk Route. I think that business of Hambantota, that project on the Colombo city port, which is of course of great strategic and security consequence for us, because Chinese will actually occupy land. They will also have operational control of that port facility. That is red rag to India. So I think all these issues would have been discussed. We are looking at a defense, you raised the issue of defense. Defense partnership between India and Sri Lanka goes back half a century. I know of every single defense establishment in India where the maximum number of foreigners, and Mr. Parthasarathy will bear me out, are Sri Lankans. And this has gone on for half a century.
Okay.
But they will have to, I think Sri Lanka will have to put its own civil-military relations in order. Fonseca's words about the current chiefs having to be dismissed because their loyalties are suspect, that part, if it's set right, I do look forward to an improved relationship in the defense.
Mr. Parthasarathy, since this discussion always centers around China, India, this triangular aspect of India, Sri Lanka and China, you think the new government coming in will help India to pull Sri Lanka away from China? Is it possible? Look, now, if you look at the kind of investments which Chinese have made there, and if you compare it to India, there is no comparison. So, is it easy for that?
No. I think let us be very clear. Neither India nor the United States has the wherewithal to completely deny China influence.
Absolutely.
The question is that influence economic, commercial, or is it strategic, impinging on our security interests? Yes. Let me tell you one more thing, what happened at Kathmandu. Worse still, the Rajapaksa offended us immensely. He was one of the 3 heads of government in a move led by Pakistan to get China into SAARC as a member.
Right.
It's not South Asian. He went even further. I recall a very senior Sri Lankan diplomat speaking in a very large gathering, saying that they wanted a security architecture in South Asia which includes China. So Rajapaksa was looking far beyond just these bases and the maritime Silk Route. So right now, the ardor for the Chinese maritime Silk Route has been cooled by 2 factors: changes in Myanmar and Sri Lanka. Now, but China will continue its influence, and you can't, really we don't have the wherewithal to compete economically. But now, the Japanese and the Americans are going to be the other factors balancing the Chinese presence.
Okay, Professor Sahadeva, now going away from this, as far as all these years, as I said in my introduction also, all these years, Indo-Sri Lankan relations have been to a great extent, influenced by what happens in Tamil Nadu. Now with a government in India for the first time in 30 years, which is not dependent on any of the 2 political parties in Tamil Nadu, how do you look at these relations now, and what does Tamil Nadu expect in this kind of a new atmosphere?
I think good thing happened is the changes in Colombo is going to really sort of change the mindset in Tamil Nadu, at least among the political class. Sri Sena is not, though he was part of the former regime, he was not the one who really involved in the war. You can really sort of bail him out in that sense. So therefore, I think the anger that was really directed against Rajapaksa is not anymore displayed at all. So you must have noticed that when Sri Sena came here, no one said anything in Tamil Nadu.
Right.
So I think but also interestingly, I think the moves that Sri Sena made also made a kind of very positive impact on the thinking, at least among the section of population. Here is a man who is willing to really sort of concede some of the demands. He is making sort of positive moves by replacing the governor, announcing to really release the lands occupied by the army and so on and so forth. I think the point is, you don't need a very strong man in a democracy, but you need a very stable democracy. I disagree with what Mr. Inder said here. I think that, you've seen what happened in Sri Lanka for the last 10 years. You had actually seen a soft authoritarianism under a very centralized constitution. I think that we don't need a democracy to sort anymore at all.
And majoritarianism.
I mean, it's complete majoritarianism. We played the whole centralized chauvinistic card to the core to really sort of alienate the liberal constituency, undermine the various sections of the population, including the institutions. Today, I think quite a bit of relief for the judiciary to get back to an action. Of course, constitution makes a lot of restrictions on the functioning. Until you really sort of change the constitution, amend the constitution, take away a lot of the executive powers and share with the parliament, you cannot expect a very independent judiciary. So is the case with the parliament sovereignty. I think the point is, it's ridiculous to say that you need a very strong leader in the neighborhood, especially in Sri Lanka, which is a multi-ethnic society.
Okay, that's interesting. Inder, that's an interesting argument. You don't need a strong leader. You don't need a strong leader. A leader who can take people along, and also somebody who has who looks at India as a friend.
It's no. Look, I've been hearing this saying, defeating terrorism and defeating Prabhakaran is not an easy. It was a cakewalk. I mean, talk to people like Colonel Hariharan, and here talk to Partha himself, who knows that period very well, and the kind of incredible war machine that Sri Lankans are up to. One of the main things that happened was that the LTT propaganda machine was able to turn a war against terror into a war against the Tamil people.
Inder, let us not look back. I'm talking of the present, and what do we expect from the new leader there, and what kind of relations will exist between India and Sri Lanka. Let's not look back, because that's a separate debate altogether.
Girish, you can't. Girish, okay. We've crossed that point about the LTT and how it was. That's another debate altogether. But as far as the new leader is concerned, I have already expressed my point of view, and I've expressed it in the strongest way, that this is a coalition of people who are natural enemies, and Sri Sena is not the kind of person who is strong enough to hold it together. That's number one.
Okay.
Number two, the Chinese influence is not going to diminish one iota, because the Sri Lankan people, unfortunately for us, look upon the Chinese as greater friends of theirs than India.
Okay.
Now, how the hell you and I can't change that?
Okay.
And why they think that, ask them.
Okay. So he makes an important point there. He says this is a coalition. He thinks it's a weak coalition, and still, as far as China is concerned, it's something which we can't wish away.
No, this is a point which GP has already made. Nobody is asking or even visualizing that China would be out from Sri Lanka.
No, but what about the weak coalition aspect?
No, I am coming to that. Just a minute. China is in Sri Lanka since 1952, not yesterday. And they have always had a very good economic relationship. The problem is of turning that economic relationship into strategic assets. That's exactly the problem, number one. Number two, Sri Sena during his election said that we are taking loans from China in a manner that we are getting under debt and may become, and I quote him, may become a colony of a third country. He did not name China, but he said we are going to. Now this is
High interest rates.
This is not Indian saying. This is a Sri Lankan who was a part of the Rajapaksa regime saying that. So there is obviously something wrong somewhere in the kind of relationship which was built. Now coming to the coalition, it is true that there are haphazard coalition partners. There are contradictions, ideological contradictions, political contradictions. The underlying fact is that why these all contradictory forces came together on one platform. It is amazing that SLFP and UNP, which have been traditional contestants to each other, fighters to each other, came on one platform. Obviously something wrong has gone within Sri Lanka which they wanted to set right, and that's why they have set 100 days program, and the President Sirisena is very meticulously trying to carry that program out. So far as that program, in fact, people have gone to
Girish, can I come in for a second?
One second, I'll come to you in there.
People have gone to courts against Rajapaksa from the smaller parties.
Right.
And Sirisena has stood up and said, we will not let international investigations against President Rajapaksa. There is a certain consensus area which I think would sustain this government.
Okay.
And it is true that if they falter, it can create problems.
Okay, very quickly in there, if you want, very quickly, we are running out of time.
Very quickly, and to answer that, just very quickly, there is a perception. Now, I'm not saying I'm backing this perception, and I address my worthy colleagues, all of who have been making some excellent points. But for God's sakes, you've got to concede that there's a huge perception in Sri Lanka that a lot of forces, outside forces, coalesced to work towards the defeat of Rajapaksa, because Rajapaksa was not playing the European and American game.
Okay.
And did not fit
Okay.
into India's new role.
Okay,
of
Inder, I think
China.
I think that's an important point.
There had to be a regime change.
Okay. Yes.
I think I tend to agree with Mr. Badhwar on this, that impression that persists in Sri Lanka that there were outside forces. But that's not the only angle. I think the question on economic, India, for example, focusing back on the discussion that you have enumerated, we are the largest trade partner with Sri Lanka.
Right.
China is second largest.
Yes, but
I
you know,
think
it won't be long before
we need to leverage that. 4 points. 1, leverage economic relationship. 2, please do not ever believe that China will vanish from the Sri Lankan radar. Nobody is saying that. What I said earlier and what my colleagues have also said, there will be a better calibration of the relationship, that you don't swing one way to the cost of the security and strategic interests of a country like India. And lastly, I think defense is another area, because in Make in India campaign and whatever is being done within the industry here, Sri Lanka can be a beneficiary of that. It's not going to happen. The last point is stability. I agree. There is a doubt on stability. We'll have to
Mr. Parthasarathy, very quickly, you think the Indian government understands all these nuances and complications, and you think it will be able to pull to certain extent Sri Lanka away from China?
After disagreeing with my old friend Inder, whom we've known each other for 40 years now, on most issues, I agree with him that don't underestimate the popularity of Rajapaksa for winning that civil war. It was a brutal civil war against a terrorist organization. So, and he deserves full credit. One last point, and I make this in all seriousness. You know, when I was in Myanmar, I complained about this closeness to China. And a wise Myanmar foreign minister told me that I may go to China for weapons. I'm a Buddhist, I have to come to India for salvation. 2 things which we have, which the Chinese can never replicate, and we should use it to our advantage. Devout Buddhists,
the cultural ties,
and the spiritual ties beyond the cultural ties with
and
India,
proximity.
democracy, and lastly but not least, the great friendship between Sanghakara and Dhoni.
Okay. I think on that note we need to end. I don't think anybody would disagree about what Mr. Parthasarathy, cultural, spiritual ties. So we'll hope to see a better relationship between the two countries. The freeze seems to have been lifted. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue of the big picture same time tomorrow.